Hey, this is Elias Torres, co-founder and CTO of Drift. Did you know that Drift is part of the just 2% of VC-backed startups led by Latin American founders? Well, I am aiming to change that. I want to highlight stories of underrepresented leaders and help change the face of corporate America. Once a month, you'll hear inspiring stories from other underrepresented leaders as we work to build our own American dream. Hit the subscribe button to make sure you get the new episodes when they drop. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter @EliasT and subscribe to get quarterly updates at drift.com/American-dream. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Samara Hernandez, someone that I've been getting to know in this space, in tech and in venture. I've been really impressed. We met a few years back, right, in the green room for Latitude in San Diego at the conference. I remember you saying, "Oh, we'll connect, we'll stay in touch." And I can't believe how much we actually have been spending time together and many things that we share with everybody here. But Samara, most important, right? You're the managing partner, director of Chingona Ventures. I love that name. Tell us, what does that name mean to all the people that might not even speak Spanish, right?
Yeah. So Chingona means basically badass woman in Spanish, and it came from Mexico. You know, historically, that word, I guess if you ask your grandparents, was maybe not a frequently used word. It came from a swear word, essentially. But over time, many people, and basically women, have used it as just describing just the badassness that comes with being a Latina in, as an immigrant to a country, all the struggles that you have to overcome. And, I used it with my sisters when we had to overcome a lot of things that comes with being a Latina. And so when I was starting my fund, I was trying to think of, a name. So there's a lot of tree funds, and there's a lot of number funds, and there's a lot of those kind of things. And my younger sister, who's not in venture, was just like, you should call it Chingona Ventures. I mean, you're Chingona. Why not just call it that, right? And so I was like, yeah, maybe I will. And so I launched it. I put it on a deck, and my LP is a Latino. He started cracking up when he saw it. And I was like, is that okay? He's like, yeah, it's okay. And so, but the name has a lot of meaning to it. And it, naturally draws a lot of people to the site and to the fund. And so I'm proud of it. And it's definitely something you have not heard in venture capital. And so you have not heard the name. There's not many people that look like me in venture. There's not many people that get funded like me in venture. So, I wanted to draw on that piece of it. And swag is coming out soon. So I'll definitely send you a sweatshirt or a shirt, because now you're in Florida.
Yes, I'll take anything. You know who I follow on Instagram? I follow George Lopez. And he uses Chingona a lot. It's like great stuff like that. So you got to look at his swag. There might be some ideas there. And what I love even more than the name itself, but it's that you say Chingona, with the name. What does that mean? Tell everybody what is that this name of this venture firm forever will have Chingona.
Yeah, it's a woman, right? It's the feminine word of chingon. It's a feminine version of it. And many times people think I only invest in women and our team is only women. And no, it's super diverse. It's led by women. There's a lot of women on it. Actually, I was just on a call before this, and one of the founders was like, "Oh, wow, it's all women." And I get that a lot, right? All women on the investment team looking at a deal. And that's very powerful, because you never hear that. As a matter of fact, the last call I was on, it was 3 Latinas on the investment team looking at a company. And that's, how rare is that? Right. And so for me, that is so important. And I do invest in men. I invest in non-Latinos as well. And it's great that the word has now become hopefully a more widely used in venture and in tech. But it's a powerful thing, and I'm proud of it.
Tell us a little bit of your firm, right? You're the founding partner. You created this from scratch. You created a venture firm, right? Tell us a little bit about the magnitude of what you do, right? Like what kind of investments you make, the side checks, how many have you written, whatever you can tell us so people can understand like how much of a role model you are and how the real deal, how Chingona you really are. I think I'm extremely impressed, right? However you want to measure like your mission or past stuff so people get an idea who you are, right?
So I typically like to tell it from my background because that's where it started and that's what drives today. That's what drove me to my fund, if that works. So it began in Mexico. And I'd like to just start with, I come from a family of migrant farm workers, of orphans, of people with no more than a fifth grade education. And I think that's really important to say because it's just hardworking people. And I was born in Mexico. I came to the US at a young age. I experienced the immigrant experience, but the poor one. And so we lived in a one-bedroom apartment with multiple families, as many immigrants do come to this country. Our first pieces of furniture and clothes were donated. And my parents were multiple minimum wage jobs. And that's how I started my life here in the United States. And I think it's really important, right? Because that's where you start and where you're at today. It's like a whole different thing. So I was in ESL until I was in fifth grade, but I picked up math really, really quickly. And so math is universal language. And so I picked up my numbers quickly. I got more homework from my teachers and I started getting advanced classes. And that's what led me to study engineering at the University of Michigan. And then from there, go into Goldman Sachs and at Kellogg. And then eventually when I graduated, go into venture. Now, early on, the reason why I went into engineering was not because I saw somebody in engineering that I knew. I actually didn't even know what that was. I was going to be a hairstylist because that's where I worked. And my sister was like, well, you're good at math and science. Maybe there's this engineering thing. I'm like, sure. How hard can it be? And then when I was at an engineering conference and then Goldman Sachs was there. They're like, you should come and work for us. And we need more engineers. I was like, what do you guys do? I had no idea. Right. And so a lot of early on in my career, it was by luck and being at a certain place at a certain time where people pulled me up. And so that's what kind of led me to go to Kellogg for my MBA. I took a class called VC Lab. And that's what gave me an internship at an angel group here in Chicago. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I've been working on the public markets. I like the private side. I like looking at and analyzing early stage companies with barely an idea, barely a product. And there's so much ambiguity around that. It's a lot about people. And so I went out to when I graduated without a job. I didn't know how hard it was to get into venture. I think it was naive, right? And through networking, I finally found a venture fund here in Chicago that was looking to hire someone. And so I convinced them to hire me, and that's where I joined.
Math Ventures?
Math Venture Partners. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm very fortunate that I joined them because I was a third person, full-time person on the team. So everything that goes into that, starting a venture fund, refining your thesis, making checks, raising money. There's so much that goes into raising a fund, which I know a lot of people nowadays are raising funds. I think everyone's raising a fund, but there's so much that you don't see in the headlines and the news. It's not just about talking to cool companies and making checks. There's a lot more to that. But I learned that, and this was before the Me Too movement, racial equity conversations this past summer. And I was there for almost 5 years, and I saw the same types of businesses getting funded, the same types of founders that had the same types of networks, maybe came from the same universities. And I just kept seeing the same things. I'm like, I just don't understand. These other businesses have really interesting business models, and maybe they don't have the right pitch. Maybe they don't have the right terminology. Maybe they don't, understand how big this can be just yet, but they have something right now. And I had enough data points over 5 years to say, okay, this business got to profitability. This business got to an exit. This business got to future rounds of funding outside of the Midwest. And so I went out to create an angel group. And my now LP, I found him. He's a Latino, and he's the chief investment officer at the Illinois State Treasurer's office. And I tried to recruit him to be an angel of my fund. And he goes, hey, I'm looking to fund a different strategy. I keep funding the same types of fund managers. I'm like, well, that's great because I want to raise my own fund. And here's my thesis and the strategy. And so together, he seeded my fund one. It was launched in April of 2019. The strategy is investing in undercapitalized markets, founders, and business models. And so at the earliest stages, so we go at the pre-seed to seed stage. We like being the first institutional check. Our fund one check size is 100 to 250,000. We can lead deals, and we're industry agnostic, but we like to focus on fintech, future of work, femtech, food, health and wellness, and ed tech. We don't exclusively invest in women and minorities, but over 50% of the portfolio has women CEOs. And I like to count CEOs, not just founders, right? Those on the board, leading the companies with majority equity upfront. Over 70% are racially diverse, and that's Latino, that's African American, that's Native American. 42% are immigrant, not by design. It was just a nice surprise, which is great. And then 87% are outside of the Valley. So my thesis is that is proving that you can get outsized returns with an outsized diversity in the portfolio. And many people think that because it's run by a Latina, which there's, I think, less than 0.05% of all venture capital is run by a Latina. And I mean, running the fund, because there's all different levels. So Fund One, we have 20 investments. We have 3 more commitments. So we'll close them in the next 2 weeks. So we'll be at 23. And then we'll do another, call it 2 to 3 more investments in the fund. So it's a different strategy, right? We have a more, it's not a concentrated portfolio, because concentrated, I would think, is like 10 to 12 investments. And we don't have a spray and pray model. So we don't do like 50 plus investments. We do something around 25 to 30, where we can invest a significant check, help the company out, but also, get them to that next stage of funding.
And so Fund One, am I asking the wrong question? I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there a Fund Two? Is that the next level of work that you have? Once you finish this, you start with the next?
So we were fortunate as last October that PayPal Ventures had committed to invest in an equity initiative around investing in more women and minorities. We were fortunate that they announced our investment in our Fund 2. And so from that basically kickstarted a lot of the conversations for Fund 2. And so that's the next goal.
The initial. So that's publicly now, people know that, right? PayPal invested in you, and then you work, decide working on that to finalize when you start investing in that fund. That's amazing, right? And you're still finishing. So this is early in the work, but it's such an amazing accomplishment, right? To envision this, to have the thesis, and to actually get it off the ground and work to I'm getting a taste of how much work it takes to fund a deal, source, find, and invest in a deal, right? So especially, we can talk a little bit about that. So it's incredible. Congratulations. Much respect. Before we go more into that stuff, the story is amazing. It's fascinating. I do have many parallels to that. And so it's awesome to hear. And one of the things I like to talk about is the American dream. And you are living proof of that. And I love how you said how many people helped you, pulled you out by being at the right time, at the right place. Mine wasn't as fancy as yours. You were at school and Goldman Sachs picked you up, right? IBM picked me up, right? And so at a job fair, and they were like, "What are you doing here? We need you." Right? It's really, I want us to be hopeful and encourage other people to know that we might be discriminated. We might have a lot of the system against us, but there's have to be hope that there's so many people that really want to help people like us and give us a chance, and they need it, right? For their own good as well. Right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you saw it from when you moved into this country. Like, someone donated my first pair of clothes, my first jacket, my first furniture. We constantly had people come through our apartment. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, but we helped get the next generation of immigrants, get them up and going and start and get them clothes and food and jobs. And then they went off. And so we saw that from when we were little, right? And so it's just kind of ingrained in us to help others.
It seems that you have a good, strong sense of community. I was getting help. I remember in San Francisco, my family that moved there in the 70s, it was like that. They were living in these apartments where the whole family had to sleep in the same bedroom, right? And luckily when I came, I came 20 years later, we had some of their lessons, and we found in Tampa, Florida, like a 2-bedroom. So it was a little bit easier. But yeah, there was my 3 brothers, we were in 1 bedroom. But I it since your parents must have been amazing to be developing that community of helping all the other immigrants. I was more focusing on getting a job, helping support my mother and get to the house. But I wasn't as surrounded by that many people like you guys were surrounding others. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was, we had some interesting characters. And now thinking about it, it's you have random strangers coming to your home, and your kids are, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they're alone with them, right? We were home alone a lot. It was just not because my mom wanted it, just because they worked 2, 3 minimum wage jobs. We didn't have a babysitter. So we would be home by ourselves. And it was just interesting to hear their stories and to, see strangers and just kind of I know it's kind of weird. It sounds weird, but it's learn the stories of Mexico and how they struggled. Some people crossed the border through the desert and survived that. And some people, had different means. And that just at the earliest stages in your life gives you a different perspective on life and on people's struggle.
I just do not know how to recreate that with my children, right? I think I grew up, my parallel to that is I would just play out on the street all day. And I would interact with people working in construction at different houses, kids from really poor kids that were selling like food in the street. I would hang out with them. I would talk to an adult. I would talk to contract. I would talk to anyone. I would go to the market. And so like I'm an extrovert and you hear all these stories, right? And you learn about all these people. Now kids just like interact with people their own age, right? And so that all this stuff influenced me to feel my experience about how the world works, right? And it's hard to recreate that. And I think it's also like we're such a difficult society where we focus on the negative, scare in the worst case scenario of what could have happened there, like terrified. But on the other hand, it's like we had to believe in others that were seeking something better for their families. They were not that. Like, oh, they're immigrants. They're going to be scary and dangerous, right? And your mother trusted them and helped them. And you got to learn and be inspired by that, right? You're paying it forward. You're now building a firm that is investing in companies of those people.
It's a full circle. And it's crazy to me, right? That like 30 plus years ago, I was there and now I'm here making investments in these companies. And it's funny because I wear, my Chingona Venture shirt or, swag when I'm on panels and whatever else. And I remember one of the last events I went pre-COVID was at Northwestern and I talked on this panel and I wore this Chingona shirt. I dropped off my jacket and everybody behind the table they're Mexican immigrants and they were just all talking to each other like, is that she wearing Chingona? I said, what? And they're like, are you Latina? Are you Mexican? And you just talk to, and it reminds me of my parents. My parents did that, right? My parents were the ones that were the busboys, the maids, and they're just like, and she's speaking right in front of everyone at Northwestern, 100 different people. And it's just like a crazy thing to just be like, 2 decades ago, I was their kids and now I'm here. And it's just a beautiful moment, I think, to just highlight what we can do with the American dream. And, many times people ask me, what's it like being a Latina in DC or what's it like being one of the only, I don't think about that ever. I'm constantly trying to be like, okay, how do I get my next deal? Why did I win that? Why did I lose that? What are the people that are most successful doing 4 or 5 funds down the line? And the only time I think through that is when I get imposter syndrome, or I'm like, oh, something went wrong, or an LP said no to me. I'm just like, but I started at a very different point, and where I'm at today, right? Even though I don't necessarily have the exact returns and whatever else, it shows me success early on for me, and it just drives me to do more. And, one example is I was on a panel recently, just a virtual one, again, at Northwestern. I do a lot with Northwestern because I went there and
I enjoy of Northwestern.
My husband got 3 degrees there. My sister got a degree there. She teaches engineering, an engineering class there. So we're a big Northwestern family. But I was on a panel and there was this entrepreneur who had like 6 different companies, all exited, now a VC, knew everyone, knew Sheryl Sandberg and whatever else. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is pretty intense. And I'm sitting on a panel with him like colleagues, but we're both still here, right? Like it doesn't matter where we came from. We're both still here and we're both proving that we can invest and make outsized returns. And so I tell myself that to remind myself that I started at a very different place and, what that means for our community, what that means for me to be successful, and it pushes me forward.
Yeah, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. I talk a lot about that. I feel it. I think we play, we play mind games with ourselves so much. People like us that are ambitious and we want to move forward and we want to learn how to overcome fear, criticize ourselves. We're like our toughest critics, right? Ourselves. And so I think that it's something to share with others. That way that you just work through that set of emotions when you're on that panel, right? I don't understand why we do it to ourselves. Like, I'm just being transparent. Like, I'm in the world of like, as an entrepreneur, it's like everybody wants to measure you by how much did you raise. Everybody wants to rate you or rank you by what's your valuation. If it's not one exit, it's like, well, then how many exits? Like you said, right? It's like well, how fast did it grow? It's just a never-ending, rat race. And instead, what I've been working through, especially through the pandemic, is we create our own game, right? It's our own version of success. And when I look back, like you, where I was, having food stamps in Tampa, Florida, in 1993, I'm like, look, I can rent a house by the water in my family and enjoy some quality time that I never had when I first never dreamed of having access.
Yes.
Right. And so we got to stop going ourselves crazy and put the right amount of push. But it's also like, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not about only having one person on that panel and who's the most, Chingona, right? It's like, It's really about, we need both stories, because some people are going to listen to that other person and connect with that person. And some people are going to connect with you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's exactly it. Like some people connected with him and they have the same story. And for me, I had a lot of people reach out to me. I'm very transparent. I was like, I never had the highest GPA. I never had the highest ACT, SAT. I did engineering, but it didn't come easy to me. I went to 3 classes at a time and went to office hours, every office hours I could possibly, even if I knew how to do the homework so I could teach others, so I could make sure that I knew, fully knew the topic. And some people relate to that. And I want to just say that because many times you see people on panels or on podcasts or in the news, how much you raise, and they put you on a pedestal. And, we're just everyday people just trying to figure it out. You're trying to get to your company to a certain point. You're trying to get to the next exit. I'm trying to get exits in my portfolio. I'm trying to raise the next fund. Right. And so we're still working through that. We have, of course, we've had success in our own right from where we started off in life, but we're still trying to make it as well. And we want to help others along the way, obviously. And we've talked about this too. People reach out a lot and you're kind of trying to balance 2 things. You're trying to run your fund, run your company, and you want to help others. And you're trying to balance how to do both. And that's a lot of pressure that you feel too, because you can't do it all. So I'm still working through that. I'm definitely not perfect. And you gave good advice to one of your friends. Is it Carolina that reached out to me? And I was just like, hey, Latina wants to get into venture, most likely to say yes to her. But she, she's like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry I didn't offer you a piece of value because I think something you posted on LinkedIn and whatever else. And, look, I think we're all trying to just do our best, and things like this where we can scale our story and we can hopefully inspire someone to start their business or their fund or, get to that next point in their life, I think is important. And there's different ways of doing that. Right.
What I like about that, right, is like, I'm constantly have this like high bar where that imposter syndrome, it cuts me in both ways. Like, I don't like saying stuff or things that are going to interpret as me boasting or being prideful. I don't feel they're good enough, right? To put them, it's like the opposite. And this country has like an amazing way of like broadcasting a lot and marketing every little thing as a big thing. But my Latino way is like, it has to be real. It has to be like an amazing thing. And so I'm always like second guessing what I'm saying, right? Because I don't want to go out and say it. And so from that perspective, what I like to do is like, I want to work hard to do great things, but I want to stop doing that and focusing on like how I can help others, right? And so that's where I'm balancing some of this. I don't want to be that guru or that person that is, those thought leaders or those like influencers. I'm trying not to be that because I don't like that. I want to focus on building a business. But it is much more fulfilling when we get to, when somebody emails me and says like, look, I was thinking of starting a company. I was afraid, but you encouraged me to go try it, right? And it's like when somebody says, I want to become a woman VC, connected with her and you inspire her, right? That could make a huge impact that we don't have enough of. And so like, that's kind of trying to balance between like, I want to be hiding and just working, but then I'm like, I need to say some of it,
Well, look, like, there's different ways of doing it. So for me, I'm the same exact way. Like, People think I only launched in January of 2020 because that was what my first article was, but I actually launched, 8 months before, and I didn't even know if it was going to close. So some people start talking about their fund before they even raise their first, half million, and they're out talking about it. And now there's rules around that you can do that. But I was like, I don't even know if it's going to go through. And then when it went through, I was like, I don't even know if the strategy is going to work. So I need to start making investments. And it wasn't until somebody in Chicago was just like, we're publishing your story. I'm like, wait, I'm not ready, and then that's when it officially launched. And so
You wanted to wait till you had 3 full, like 20x wins. You're like, oh, I'm not done yet.
Exactly. I wanted to wait.
One fund is not enough. Wait till I have successful funds in a row, and wait till I beat Sequoia's returns,
Right.
That's how we are, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how we are. And I'm not that person. And so, and I look at some people and they're follower rich, capital poor in that, right? Like, and not to call out anybody or anything, but like that's eventually that'll lead to other things, hopefully, right? You have to build a brand. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm a small Midwest fund. I need to go out there and get people to come to the site to, see me as a potential investor in their fund, to potentially invest in my fund, that whole thing. Yeah. But I need to balance, to your point, the like being out there and talking about this with actually building. And if I'm not going to be a VC, if I don't get returns, bottom line, that's what I'm striving for, right? It doesn't matter how many followers I have. It doesn't matter how many tweets I have. But I will say that some of the social media platforms have also like helped connect me with other people and helped spread the word about certain things that I want to spread. And that's many times about the Latino community, because we get left behind in so many different areas and we're so different, right? Like some of us are dark, some of us are light, some of us speak Spanish, some of us speak Spanglish, some of us are, rich, some of us are poor. Like it's all over the place, and that's beautiful about the Latino community, but it makes it sometimes very hard for us to organize and for people to be like, are you this or are you that? And I want to just show that we're here. There are Latinas in VC, although few. There are Latinos like you building amazing companies. And so let's get that next generation of people doing this while we're still building. And it's just a hard balance to do both.
I mean, like, look, you just said amazing businesses, and I'm like cringing. I'm like, please, I'm like, I know all my flaws. I know all the things that the pain, the growth. But I was gonna say, I think we did a good job of describing this feeling, right? Where we're like, what imposter, whatever, like you said, where we haven't done enough yet to publicize it. Is that different by gender? Is it like, I feel like we both describe the same exact feeling, right? And yet you are masterfully overcoming it, right? And you're doing it, right? You put yourself out there, you put the news, you carry your name, you invest in companies, you close the deals, you're working on the next fund. You're amazing, right? And it's like, is it like, what do you see in other women, that want to become a VC, where that is limiting them to do all the things that you do? Or is that just natural comes to you?
I do see some differences, and I'll talk about it from a Latina perspective, because those is where I see the biggest difference and where we represent the least in tech and adventure. Many times Latinas that I talk to are like, well, I need to take care of my family. I can't be too far from home if they're undergrads, which is something my parents kind of wanted. It's the risk piece. It's women, it's everyone, but it's a risk piece. It's daunting to see that much money that you have to put up to invest in a fund. So people don't know this, but it's very expensive to launch a fund. So many times you have to go without salary for 2 years, and you don't know if you're going to be able to successfully raise. Many times you have to then, or not many times, you actually have to put up 1% typically of the total fund as your own personal capital. So if that's a $25 million fund, that's $250,000. So not only do you have typically a lot of loans, you don't have a cushion, you may not have salary for 2 years. And that's just the beginning of the fund, right? That's if you are successful in raising a fund. And if it's under, 10 million, typically it's really hard to get any sort of salary for the long term. And so there's a lot of risk starting your own fund. And then it's a business where you don't know if you're doing well for 5 to 10 years. So I'm making all these investments, but I don't know if they're doing well. I know that there's revenue growth. I know that they've raised future rounds of funding. I know, partnerships and whatever else, but there's no exit yet. And so there is so much unknown. And, one of the things that I saw recently was that women are taught to be perfect and men are taught to be brave. And for me, the biggest thing I learned growing up, and it wasn't my parents or anybody else, just society, I don't know what it was, but I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to have the right numbers. I wanted to have the right everything before I even started something. And I remember even applying for a job, right? So when I graduated from Kellogg, I was looking at these jobs and there are all these like 10 qualifications. And I remember like, oh, I can't apply for that. I can't apply for that. And my husband was actually like, why can't you? You have 2 of those things and the rest you'll learn. And I see that over and over again in so many women, especially that are like, oh, I don't have the right thing. Right. And then on top of that, not only don't think I have the right skill sets, I need to get a job that pays a good salary because I have to take care of my parents. I have to pay off my loans. I have to, and so you start at a different base and then, growing up, you're taught to be a certain way. And so I think that risk component is very difficult to grasp. And so for me, it wasn't necessarily that I knew or that I'm different or that I have like this innate skill to be risky because my dad's an accountant who taught me to save when I was 13 years old, half my paycheck. And then when I left Goldman Sachs, he was like, wait, you're leaving a company with good insurance. What? Right? to go where?
When I left IBM, everybody was like, are you crazy? And it's like, I went to a 10-person company that only raised $1 million. It's like, this is the other thing. I don't know if what we're doing is a good job to encouraging people to start funds or to start companies, or we're discouraging them. But I had this has been such a learning thing for me, what you just said, that holy shit, starting a fund, it is crazy. What you just described to me is like maybe worse than starting a company. It's wow.
Yes, it's insane. It's like I'm like, why am I doing this? But I love it. I can't see myself doing anything else. I think about this every single moment of the day, right? Like just like you're obsessed with your solving the problem that you're solving for your company, I'm obsessed with this part of it. But I think what helped me was I saw somebody that was like, oh, have you tried going into this asset class? Did you try going to venture capital? Like, what is it? I know what it is, but am I a fit? And then people like even my husband saying, hey, you should apply. You're going to learn everything else. These are the things you do have. And then, getting in. And it's just, sometimes it's just someone showing you like, you've never thought about this, but you can do this, right? And even if it sounds really risky and it just sounds daunting, if you really love it, there's an opportunity for you to have a place here, right? And everyone's journey is different. And so I remember you being on the panel. This is how I was like, I need to meet you. I think Grady from Sequoia. You were on the panel with them and he was like, you were talking about exits. I don't remember the story exactly, but that was the first time that you were like, wow, this is where my company can grow to. And for me, it's the same thing. I was like, I had no idea. If you would have asked me 5-6 years ago, you're going to start a company, you're going to start your own venture fund and invest in founders you absolutely love. And you're going to have more conviction than anybody else, but you're going to love it every single day. And you're going to be able to raise fund 1 and fund 2. I've been like, you're out of your mind. No one else is doing this. And sometimes, again, it's just someone saying you can, and then you're not saying, all right, I'm not perfect. I don't know what this means. I'm probably unqualified and I probably don't look like anybody else, but F it. I'm just going to go try it. Right. What's the worst that could happen?
Absolutely. I think that, and I'm watching the time a little bit, but I think it's awesome. I've been watching, becoming a fan of Brene Brown. I think I love that line that you said that I don't want to stereotype. I don't want to say it wrong, but it's like you said, women are taught to be perfect and men are taught to be brave, right? And how that needs to be flipped. So we need to encourage everyone to be brave, right? To not try to hold ourselves to this perfection, to this, that holds us back to not trying things. But there's a story from Brene Brown about her daughter that she was asked in a swim meet, in a swim team, and they gave her the toughest swim. I think it was like the butterfly, and because they just put different swimmers into different categories. And the daughter was struggling and crying. She wanted to quit and she didn't want to do it. And so there was this struggle of like, do you pressure, do you not? And that So she came out with a strategy that she was going to scratch the heat and miss it. And that would have been a fine and she wouldn't got in trouble. And they said to her, you do whatever you need to do. The last moment before the heat was about to, they were going to blow the whistle or whatever. She shows up out of the room, out of the locker, gets into it, and gets in the water. And that's a terrible drop. Like, she is last by like a mile. Like, I think everybody comes out and she's still swimming and the parents are like supporting her. But she said something that blew me away, that for her, winning was jumping into the pool. Her winning was not about being number one in that race. And so I think I'm connecting that with us is I'm building a company and I'm enjoying and I'm learning and I'm growing and we're here and we're representing and we're showing people we can be here. You're starting a fund, you are investing in companies, you're helping people, you're helping operators have an opportunity to have a shot. We don't need to be worrying about how much bigger you are or how much more successful than so forth. You're doing it. And we have to appreciate how that impact of, like, somebody showed you that VC asset class and he put you in this whole path for your life, what we can do for many other people, right? Try something. So it's unbelievable.
And look, ultimately, I want to create multi-generational wealth for our community. I'm doing this so I can invest in the next generation of founders. Many of them are Latinos, that they can get, a new wealth that they never ever thought about for their families. For me, to do it with me and my fund, and for my LPs, my limited partners that are investing in my funds. And these are, some of them are, endowments and foundations, but their end clients are everyday Americans, right? And I take that very seriously. I take, having and investing their money on behalf of them very, very seriously. And so for me, it's about multi-generational wealth. It's about thinking about it in a very, very different way, and changing, how we have influence in our community with wealth. And right, we can organize differently. We can have a voice differently. We can, make changes in our ecosystem very differently.
I'm in Tampa and 3 other friends, Filipino and 2 Blacks and myself, right? And they were asking me about investments, and they were talking about the stock market, and they're talking about a stock, doubling or something, and I was explaining to them that it's really hard, right, to build all this wealth because we don't have access to the right information. But I was explaining to them how investing in an angel and a seed on a company that goes multi-billion, what are the kind of returns, right? Mm-hmm. They've heard this before. They were like, tell me more. And they tell me, how do I get access to that? Because they had $25,000 to invest, but they were peanut buttering that over stocks without too much information, right? I love what you said, right? Is that we need to help accelerate the access to multi-generational wealth, right? That will make a difference in the Latino and the Black community in this country. And what you're doing is it's really, really powerful, because you're showing that it's possible to play at a much larger game, right? That it's not just about having a great salary for 30 years and then be able to retire, right? That's still a dream for most of us Latinos here in this country. But you're creating amazing wealth that will impact everybody, community, the LPs, the operators, their families, their children, and the future generation.
It's a multiplier effect, right? Like the fact that PayPal Ventures committed to my fund, and then the next day it was announced that I invested in a company led by a Latina, where 100% of the cap table was women, 80% were Latinas, right? But it shows immediately what happens. I just hired my full-time hire, a Latina. So it's just, you invest in one, you're going to invest in 100 different Latinos, right? Or others, because of our diversified networks. And that's what I learned as a child when I had people come to my home, immigrants, helping them out. And I helped them out, my family helped them out, then they helped somebody else out, and I helped multiple families. And so I'm just doing that on a very different level, very different scale.
And I want to leave it there, pause for now for this conversation, because I think that's really beautiful, well said. I feel like we should talk another time on the actual due diligence and some more stories on due diligence and decision making, because I think people want to know more about that, right? And to help you expose you to Latino communities. I want to be whatever it takes as a village, right? As a group of people, right? To bet on each other, to help each other. I want more Latinos to come to you, Latinos, Latinas, and like look for investment. You invest in the best one. They become successful, and like, let's blow this thing up, right? And in whatever way I help, I'm working with you. I'm at your service, right? And fun to work with you.
Yeah, no, you too. You too. That's the thing. When I saw you on stage, I was like, okay, we got to connect. And we did. And we've been connecting ever since. And so
connect with everybody. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to be involved in everything with everybody because then you're not going to be successful. I'm really thankful that organically you and I have been working together more and we just keep crossing paths. And so it's like, we got to do activities that have high leverage for everybody. So you are definitely working with Samara is high leverage, everybody. It's good that if you can get into that motion, get in there. We'll talk again. Really so impressed. I love your story. I love the immigrant story. And I love what you're doing and how well you are, how confident you are and that you're doing the right thing and something that you're so passionate. It's like, we want more people to find stuff that they're passionate about and they can 100%, right?
I love this. Thank you for having me, come on and let's continue the conversation. Let's do a due diligence podcast. But I love this. I love this. This is what I'm passionate about. And you too. Let's get more Latinos funded. Let's get more Latinos creating multi-generational wealth.
It's incredible what's possible in this country. Again, and just to wrap up with the American dream, like that we can have access to creating multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies in returns, right? It's incredible that we can do that. We have the opportunity to build the same thing that others have built in this country for many, many years, right? It's the time. Bueno, hasta luego. We'll be in touch. Thanks for listening to The American Dream. Let me know what you thought of this episode by tweeting me at EliasT. Be sure to hit subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Por favor. If you're looking for more leadership insights and stories like the ones you just heard, sign up for my series, The American Dream, at drift.com/American-Dream. Every quarter, you'll learn how Drift is progressing towards our mission of remaking the face of corporate America. And you will get insights from amazing Latin American and entrepreneurs of color, and leaders like Manny Medina of Outreach, Maria Martinez of Cisco, and many others, along with curated content, news, events, and ideas delivered straight to your inbox. Muchas gracias, and don't forget to sign up.